Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Tuesday night special guest. And tonight we have a very special guest. You see him there, Netanel, Crispe. Everybody, of course, is consumed with what's going on in Eretz Yisrael. And as always, we're davening, we're doing mitzvahs, and there's been such a wonderful outpouring of Torah, mitzvahs, davening, tzedakah. People have really, really risen up. And as we know, whenever godliness is elevated, it also elevates the antagonism of godliness. And one of the hotbeds of that antagonism to godliness is, perhaps ironically, perhaps expectedly, the universities of our country, including and perhaps spearheaded by the most elite of universities. And we have with us here Netanel, who is a student at Yale. And this is what he has been dealing with, and not only dealing with it, but making an effort to combat. So, Netanel, first of all, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. Give us a little background. What year are you in? What's sort of your little bit of your background story, just so we get a sense. We meet you here. We just had your parents here for Shabbos, which was a great honor. But give us a little background about yourself and what year are you in and so on. And then we'll walk into the story as it's going on now.
Absolutely. So first off, I just want to thank you, Rabbi, and everybody here for having me. If you just had my parents, I'm not sure I can meet up to the standards that they may have set. I will definitely do my best to make this worth everyone's time. But my name is Netanel Crispe, as mentioned. I'm a junior at Yale University studying U.S. history with a concentration in colonial America. My interests specifically pertain to exploring the influence of Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah, on the founding of America, and that larger kind of tradition. I live in Danby, Vermont. I've lived all over the world, though. I was born in Israel and Jerusalem, and so I'm a dual citizen. Grew up in Philadelphia and last 8 or 9 years in Vermont. And I'm just really happy to be here. So thank you so much.
Okay. So 2 weeks ago, it's Shmini Atzeres, it's Shabbos. However, the word gets around. We hear about it. At first, we hear numbers. We don't know what to believe, what not to believe. Sadly, as soon as Yontif is over and we start checking all of our devices and so on, we find out that it's even worse than it probably was reported to a lot of places. And as Jews, we immediately react all over the world, Torah, Tefillah, Tzedakah, and so on. And then what appears to be something that we never would have imagined comes out, which is not only calls for restraints, but sympathy for the murderers and so on. And where is it coming from? It's not coming from what we commonly think of as the aggrieved underclass. It's coming from the elite. So tell us how this played out on your campus.
Yeah, absolutely. So unfortunately, as I can expect, all of you faced, during Shemoneh Atzeres, Simchas Torah, we started hearing rumors, different bits of information that were passed along through shul. And when we came out of the holiday, everybody, for me personally, my heart dropped. You were exposed to the sheer brutality of the events and the scale in which they transpired. And unfortunately, immediately upon coming out of Chag, I was met with two different elements of news. The first of which was the statistics, the numbers. At that point, it was 700 murdered that I immediately saw. Videos, images circulating, my phone covered with, text messages and notifications. At the same time, I also saw a poster that had just been promoted by a student organization here on campus, an officially recognized student club by the name of Yale for Palestine, that advocated and was calling for all of their allies and members of the Yale community to gather with them the following day, Monday the 9th, at 3 p.m. outside of the city hall to celebrate the success of the resistance. As you can imagine, there's no way to even begin to understand how somebody could be so deluded in their understanding of this atrocity to ever use such terminology. And it was really just crushing to see that fellow students of mine could somehow celebrate the mass murder of what is now, unfortunately, we know is over 1,400 people, the ruthless rape, beheading, and torture of babies, elderly, men, women, and children. And that they could use that kind of language to describe such an atrocity committed against humanity. After immediate criticism that was revised slightly to remove the word celebration and exchanged with uplift, which isn't much better, as you can imagine. And remarkably enough, that event was allowed to take place with about 100 people in attendance outside of City Hall here in New Haven, many of whom were students, many of whom are people that I live with, who I have classes with, who are basically were there for a few hours chanting for the death of Israel, chanting for the death of everyone that I love, my family, my friends, and it was truly barbaric and really just painful and disheartening to see from our community. This was then unfortunately kind of complemented by just horrendous and really vile rhetoric that was promoted by a member of Yale's faculty by the name of Zarina Graywall, who's a professor here at Yale within the branch of American Studies, amongst other things, who started issuing in the immediate hours following the massacre and the first reports of it, different tweets and posts on social media, on Facebook and on Twitter, in which she argues that the Palestinians have every right to armed resistance, refers to in reposting a video that shows and depicts the disgusting events of that day, calls it an extraordinary day in her eyes. And just similarly, just completely vile rhetoric that not only condoned and attempted to justify, but fully came out in support of the mass murder of innocent civilians. And that was truly atrocious and remarkable for anybody with, I think, the most basic element of morality to be able to have to see, and is now something that I'm working tirelessly to try to combat.
Give us a little background. This Yalees for Palestine. Had you ever heard of this before? Was this something that was a presence on campus? Had you ever had any kind of interaction with them? Or is this something that springs up suddenly out of nowhere?
Absolutely. So unfortunately, this is a very old club here on campus. It is an officially recognized student club, which means they actually receive funding from the university as a student club. That is something that me and many of my peers here on campus are working tirelessly now to try to revoke that funding and try to revoke their position as a recognized organization. But they've been here for a while. I don't know the exact year of their inception, but it's more difficult to combat something like that because in their basic kind of framework as an organization, they articulate their values more pertaining to the issue of Palestinians rather than something like this, which, as you can imagine, today's climate, specifically political climate, is very dangerous to try to engage with in any specific manner and very tricky. However, this was a time, at least in my experience at Yale, where they drew the line and crossed that line to such a horrific degree that there's no backpedaling from. Of course, as I mentioned, they immediately tried to. They realized they messed up with the language they used. But I think it was just a testament to they finally revealed their true colors, and their continued efforts on campus since that day to promote this horrific rhetoric and violence is a testament to that. They have been involved. There have been other, conflicts between that student club and other students on campus, specifically the Jewish students and the Israeli students in recent years, but nothing on this scale. And it's really just astonishing that when something is so unbelievably clear that there are no sides and this isn't a political issue, that they can still try to find some way of justifying the murder of Jews.
I mean, this is shocking. We know that this has been going on not only at Yale, but we understand, okay, obviously, I would say we and probably everybody on this Zoom call have very strong opinions about the political circumstances and so on, and yet we can still recognize that maybe there are other opinions and so on which can be discussed and negotiated. But to see the sheer brutality and then instantaneously the next day to come out and in any way to have some decency and keep your mouth closed. Now, this woman who is the professor, being a professor at Yale is one of the most prestigious positions, perhaps the most prestigious in academia. You don't get that job by answering a want ad in the Penny Saver. Where did she come from? Has she ever voiced anything like this before? Is this something that professors do? They participate in rallies and and protests on campus. I mean, we're accustomed to perhaps, the sort of Cossack, Bolvan, buffoons, but this is Yale. This is the most elite university that we have. And this is a professor at Yale. Is there any sign that you saw this coming? Is this an indication of what Yale does stand for? Has there been pushback? I know I'm asking you 20 questions here. Has there been pushback from the university, from other groups, other professors? Anyone come out and said, wrong, bad, evil?
Yeah, so more generally speaking, I definitely agree with you. There are certain standards that, as an institution, especially a higher level educational institution, that we are supposed to hold ourselves to, that we promote ourselves as having held ourselves to, and that we are supposedly, these are the basic principles upon which our institution is founded. The values of Yale, as documented and illustrated from its earliest kind of founding days, goes by the model of Lex et Veritas, light and truth. Like, these are the core features of Yale as an institution, and something that unfortunately are being challenged quite blatantly right now. And in terms of, making an assessment of professors at large, I think you drew on a really important point. That is, many people might not agree with the events happening and transpiring in the Middle East right now. They might have political reasons, they might have moral reasons, whatever it is. As I initially pointed out, the massacre that occurred, there's no room for indecisiveness. This was an atrocity committed against humanity, people of all backgrounds, all nationalities. This was an international humanitarian crisis. And there should be no sides to that. That's very, very simple on a basic moral foundation. But expanding outside of that, if somehow, remarkably enough, somebody is, disturbed or somehow divided in their opinions, there's also basic human decency. There's recognizing how many people at Yale were directly affected by this atrocity, having some kind of compassion and sympathy towards that, and recognizing when to voice certain things and when not to. And so the timing of this very direct advocacy of now moving towards Palestinian rights or anything in this larger geopolitical history concerning Israel is completely out of place, specifically in this time. And that's truly unfortunate. I think you have seen quite a bit of pushback, which I am very encouraged by, amongst professors and students. This petition now has just under 52,000 signatures, with people all over the world. Over 60 countries are represented in this. Hundreds of Yale students, alumni, and faculty. And you've had many different efforts amongst faculty within her own department who have pushed back against her in private, that she actually makes fun of on Twitter, which is even more disturbing, the closed-mindedness that you see in this professor towards that kind of criticism. But many professors who have also reached out to me. You've had a coalition of professors who have met with the president of the university to voice their concerns on this issue. Unfortunately, it's not 100% either direction. You definitely have others who support this. And that's really, really disturbing to me. And I think reflects a deeper problem that is facing modern day academic institutions. We would like to hope that these standards are upheld, and that we can respect these individuals and the offices in which they hold. But at a certain point, I think, have to be a big review of what it is our faculty is really engaged in, and what it is that we hold to as an institution. So you're facing a lot of those different things right now, and it's difficult to discern exactly where things stand.
So you began a petition. I want you to please give me the address where people can go online. I'll put it in the chat. And then if you could just tell us the backstory about that and how that got started. And you mentioned 52,000 signatures, including me. So if you could just give us a little bit about that. Just tell me what is the website. I'll put it in the chat for everybody. And then if you could give us the description of how that came to be and the support that you've seen or not seen, and what surprised you or impressed you or given you hope. What is the name? What is the website for it?
So I'm trying to see. I think I can throw it in the chat right here.
Oh, okay. If you can
tell me if you got that.
Yeah, you did. Okay. So it's
okay,
there
wonderful.
for everybody. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like a direct link, so it's not an easy name.
All right. Okay. So click on that link while Netanel gives us a little background as to the story here.
Yeah. So basically, as I mentioned, immediately coming out of Chag, I saw initially this, celebration that was going to be taking place And then at the same time, I was exposed to the tweets of this professor. I don't remember exactly who exposed that to me. I'm assuming it was one of my classmates. But I felt that as we kind of discussed briefly, there's a long history here at Yale and across the world of this constant debate and struggle that students on campus are facing whenever something comes up regarding Israel or the Jewish people. It's always somehow a political conflict. And no matter what happens, we always seem to be facing backlash and having to defend ourselves and our position. And I felt that this was a time in which students, especially, had to take a stand. We had to make an example so that this isn't allowed to just persist. And that the institution, the university, has grounds to take a stand, that this was crossing the line once again to such a far degree that there shouldn't be any room for this at the institution, and that the institution has to ask itself whether the promotion and celebration of the mass murder of innocent civilians represents their values. And if it doesn't, they have to take action. And that's basically what I'm advocating for. So I started this petition in hopes of getting, action from the administration here at Yale, as well as getting attention to be drawn on Yale and at all these other, Ivy League schools, which managed to escape a lot of that criticism many of these times. And I felt like the attention had to be drawn. I'm very thankful for all the support that's come out. Over 600,000 people have read this petition. So it's gotten international attention. People are seeing it. Whether you sign it or not is not the deepest concern for me. It's more getting attention put on this. And I'm very thankful for the fact that so many people have come out with their support and have helped build this up to what it is in just the past few days. And also seeing that similar initiatives have been taken by my peers at other institutions across the board. Similar petition was created by a student at Columbia against a vicious professor there, which garnered in the last 3 days over 51,000 signatures. It's another petition was just started today at Cornell for a professor who was publicly chanting, things like the death to Israel at a rally on campus, I believe yesterday. So we're seeing progress. There's been, moves made by these institutions. You see at Stanford, at NYU, at Penn, and at Harvard. And I think together we can really set an example. And I really have faith in these institutions to hold up to their ideals, to be kind of the beacon to their peer institutions across the board, and set an example that there are consequences to such rhetoric. This will not be tolerated, and this is not what we stand for at these schools.
So back us up here half a step. Prior to this, had you ever felt unsafe for being Jewish? And you're clearly a Jewish kid, got a yarmulke, you got a beard. Everybody knows you're born in Israel. Had you ever felt on the campus or in any classroom situation that you were ever anything other than a welcome member of the student body?
So I would discern those two questions. The first of which, in terms of fear, absolutely not. As a very basic concept, I don't believe in living in fear. I'm extremely proud to be very open from Yid, and an Israeli and everything else. I'm Chabad. I'm born and raised, and I see this as a form of shluchus for me. And that's nothing I would ever shy away from. And I would encourage all Jewish students, from regardless, any background, any religious background, regardless of what it is, to be very proud in that skin. And I think when people see it, it only solidifies your strength on campus and helps unify us. So in that respect, never scared. But in terms of feeling as a part of the community, that's always a very tricky thing. I think rather than focusing on my experience, I can, speak to that of many of my peers. And I know specifically in this last week, there was an article written by one of my friends in the Yale Daily News named Netanel Schwartz, which basically articulated in much more profound words than I ever could the kind of disillusioning reality of being a Jewish student now on Yale's campus, and the alienation that he's felt from many of his peers. The fact that the students who he's very good friends with, who know everything about him, who he's lived with for the last 3 years, didn't ask how he was, never thought to check in on him. That these people who he lives with are at that rally, who are celebrating the death of Israel and celebrating the atrocities. And that's something that I think it's very hard for Jewish students to constantly face. And that we have to derive strength from the fact that we are in this together, that we are united and we are strong. And I think also focus on all the good and the support that we have gotten from many of our peers. Specifically this past week, there were many different gatherings done on campus, and it was a really beautiful sight to kind of find that light in the darkness where so many different Jewish students, Israeli students from every different background who might not engage with each other normally to the same degree all came together arm in arm to mourn and remember the victims of this atrocity, many of whom were personal friends or family members of students here, and that we were supported similarly by many of our non-Jewish friends who came out and wanted to voice their concern and check in on us. And I think in that sense, we focus on the good, and we have faith that through greater education, greater representation of our values and what it is the Jewish people stand for here on campus, we can change the hearts and minds of those people who are maybe at the moment turned against us. And I think that's ultimately why I'm so proud to wear a yarmulke and tzitzis very openly, have my beard. It's something that it's for everyone a form of shluchus, and as the Alter Rebbe explains, a little light can distill or dispel, thank you, dispel a lot of darkness. So that's ultimately what we have to engage in, greater acts of chesed, of love and kindness, and that's what I'm trying to advocate here for at Yale.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that light. Have you had anyone support you from other student organizations, Gentile organizations, social organizations? How what has that reaction been? And to the change.org petition that you started, do you have any sense of who's signing that and where it's coming from?
Absolutely. So in terms of organizations, I've definitely had the backing of many student groups here on campus, many of the Jewish Life organizations. This is something that, to be absolutely transparent, I did as a personal initiative. I'm not representing anybody in terms of any specific organization doing this, but I've definitely had their support. I'm very thankful for that. But I think that's perhaps best portrayed by the show of support that has come from around the world. As I mentioned, over 60 different countries are represented in signatures. Just for example, what's really astonishing and so encouraging with that is this includes countries like Afghanistan, somebody from Kabul signed it, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Pakistan, United Arab Emirates. These people have come and sent their support. And I think that's really a testament to, this search for our common humanity, that we can come together in our times of need, and really, really empowering to me and my fellow students alike. There have been over 3,000 comments, I believe, on the petition coming in support. I've received emails from people around the world. People have reached out on Facebook and on Instagram to tell me that they support this and are thankful for it. And I'm really encouraged by that. And I recognize, I just want to highlight that it's not as much a support of what I've done specifically, but much more of support of all the Jewish students, all the Israeli students on campuses around the world who are facing this right now and who might not have this representation. I think should be empowering to all of them to know we care and you're not alone. People around the world are here for you and they're standing with you.
Okay. Now you mentioned that similar types of atrocious behavior from professors at Penn, Harvard, Stanford, Cornell. I mean, these are the elites of our country. This is where we send our best and brightest. Do you have any sort of insight as to how did it get so screwed up? I mean, these institutions are perceived as being, so to speak, Jewish institutions. They weren't in the 30s. The Jews were allowed in incrementally, quotas and so forth. And then they became sort of dominated by Jewish kids. What went wrong here? How is it that the elite, the academic elite of our society, not the sort of bums, could be so vile? How did that happen? Or are they bums just because they're smart?
Yeah, so I can't make, again, like a universal claim. I can only give my perspective. And that is, one, not in any attempt to disparage any individual or any group or any institution, but I think, these institutions are recognized based on their reputations and what is rightfully so in many ways, a very long tradition of excellence. That is not always going to be universally true across the board within the faculty, within the student body. There are always exceptions, and there are always different strengths and weaknesses with any individual, which has to be recognized in the larger scheme of things. That's definitely true with me. I suck at math and, science. If anybody's wondering, I'm not good at it. But history is kind of my strong suit. So, everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, and we can only try to reinforce and aid them in growing kind of around the board as an individual. But towards this larger theme, I don't want to be incorrect in any assertion statistically, but you do see a trend, as you mentioned, historically within Jewish students, if you're looking at that angle of it, from the 30s until you have the quotas, and then in the 70s when these schools start opening up with more diversity and a huge boost in Jewish students on a lot of these campuses. But from my understanding, in recent years, you've actually started to see a rapid decline once again of Jewish life on campus. Yale, if I'm not mistaken, is down to now 10% or under 10%, whereas at its height, it was, again, I don't want to be misquoted here. I could be incorrect, but something like 15, maybe even as big as 20. You definitely are seeing kind of a reverse trend. I don't know what that's representative of, and I don't know if that's indicative of anything larger problem. But just within the theme of Jewish students on campus, that's definitely something that we have to face as members of this community. And I think as a larger theme, a lot of institutions are facing, specifically in the rapidly evolving political climate and social climate of the US and of the Western world, a big identity crisis where they're trying to reconcile kind of these founding principles and values from their inception with the, supposed values or popularized themes of the modern age. And this is something that's always difficult that they are trying to navigate. I do not, envy them in having to do that. But I think at a certain point, and this is really where this comes to head, is the institution has to be very explicit and lay out for everyone what those values are and what they're going to do in upholding them. And that's something we need. We all need clarity right now. I'm As a part of my research, I'm very much engaged in looking at the early roots of Yale, which have a lot of Jewish inspiration, specifically within Kabbalah and other elements. Our motto I mentioned was Lux et Veritas, but our other motto is actually Urim V'Tumim. So if you go to Yale, you'll see Hebrew everywhere. So that's something that I'm very interested in, is how we've evolved outside of this and moved away from a lot of our roots, and what that reflects both as kind of an evolution, a progress, but also things that may have been missed in that development.
Jewish Yale was, and how.
Sorry?
Yeah. So there's an old Hebrew saying, Masha lo Mashiach, what was is not what's going to be. That there is a sense, perhaps, that this is going to create a total shift. There's going to be a change. Do you get any sense, or unfortunately, as we've seen before, everybody becomes extraordinarily passionate, and then a little fatigue sets in, and the World Series and Amazon Prime Day, and people get distracted, not Jewish people specifically, but the world as a whole wants to move on. Do you get a sense that perhaps this is going to really shake up and make a change? We've heard about times professors being fired, employers revoking offers, donors dropping out. And at the same time, we know that parents will do backflips to get their kids into Yale. And are they ever going to say, well, you know what, maybe I'm reconsidering Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Penn, Cornell, Stanford? Or do you have any sense of where that's going?
Yeah, great question. I wish I had, more insight into that. I'm not a clairvoyant, unfortunately. But I think, this theme, this energy, this excitement surrounding current issues, I fear is fleeting like any big news. And I worry as to where the attention will be in the coming weeks. But at the same time, I'm very proud to see what we have accomplished here. The university is very aware of the efforts that have been made, are responding to it. I've been in touch with the the president of the university. We haven't received that response quite yet. I cannot make any claim as to what it's going to be. But there is, they are aware of this. They've received that criticism, and they've been flooded with that criticism. And I think that's something that they can no longer ignore, and which is very inspiring to see. I think equally, we notice that the professor has blocked her social media. She has definitely felt the consequence of this. Her Wikipedia page now outlines this petition as a part of that. And that's something that's going to stay with her for life. So at the end of the day, these professors are, I hope, going to recognize that, if you do this, people are going to take action against you, and you're going to have to suffer the consequences. And there are consequences to such rhetoric. And I think equally inspiring is the scale in which this has been kind of promoted, not just at Yale, but across the board. As we mentioned, Stanford, NYU, Harvard, Penn, Cornell, they all have these initiatives in the work and have been successful to varying degrees. But there's international attention on this issue right now. And I think that's really inspiring and gives me hope moving forward. At the same time, this idea of, is Yale always going to be this school that everybody's going to bend over backwards to get into? I don't know. I'm not sure. I hope for that. But I think there's much larger problems facing academia that this only reflects as a broader theme. As I mentioned, this larger identity crisis that I think will become difficult if they don't address it in the immediate future. I actually received today a message on Facebook from a parent whose daughter was looking to apply to Yale this fall. And reached out to me and basically asked, if she could speak because she's concerned about Jewish life now and isn't sure if they're going to apply anymore. So you definitely have a balance. I don't think that's reflective or indicative of a larger, student body or applicant pool, but you definitely have changing tides, and I'm curious to see where that goes.
I have a couple of quick questions, and then if you have some time, we'll open it up if somebody wants to unmute. And again, real brief, we want to respect Netanel's time, but I have a few quick questions. As I mentioned, your parents were here, your sisters in the University of Chicago. I just want to know, anyone in your family ever get like an A minus? Was that like anybody ever get like an A minus, or that would not happen? That's one question. I have another question. I know your mother's watching. I see the Pringles. Are you eating properly? Because Pringles is not part of a balanced diet. I want to see protein, vegetables, and good health. Come on. We need you to be healthy.
If you get my mom involved, she'll have a petition with 1 million signatures to support that initiative. So I got to be careful what I say here. But
so you got to take the Pringles down and put up some vegetables. Okay, if anybody would, okay, if anybody would, briefly, we want to really respect Netanel's time. Look in the chat for the change.org petition, which everyone should certainly read, and if you feel that it's appropriate for you to sign it, certainly to do so. If somebody wants to jump in, again, please let's respect Netanel's time. We really appreciate it. If you have a quick
Who's
question,
helping you financially with your endeavors?
Specifically the petition?
Question. Yeah, these are all costing you money. Who's helping you? Is there people helping you? Can Rabbi Epstein ask people if you have some place where they can send money to help you with your petition to help enrich the Jewish campus against this type of darkness?
Phenomenal question. So to be very transparent, I have not been fundraising at all for this petition. It's not actually costing me anything. It's a free platform, aside for time, which you can value in your own ways. But there has been the platform does actually fundraise itself to help promote it. And so there have been thousands of people who have donated in varying degrees to that to raise money, which has helped promote it to hundreds of thousands of people across the world as well. I'm eternally grateful to those individuals who have chosen to do that of their own volition. It's not something I'm personally advocating for. I think there are many great organizations here at Yale that are fundamental and really vital to Jewish life here on campus. Chabad at Yale is one of them, absolutely. And if anybody's interested in supporting that, I will always support that as well. But I'm not personally seeking any funding in at this moment, but I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, we did repost the link for the changed petition. I do recommend that everybody read it. And then again, if you feel that it's appropriate for you to sign it, and there is an option there to contribute, but it doesn't go to Netanel personally and so on. If anyone else has a question, please unmute, jump in quickly, and then we'll say goodnight to everybody.
Just two things. First of all, we already clicked on the petition. It's very easy to fill out, and they do ask the organization for money, but that money just goes to promote an organization that makes petitions possible. Yeah. And they seem to be well enough funded that you don't have to give them money at a time when Jews are in crisis. I'm understanding that we're not being encouraged to click on, yes, I will send you money, Mr.
No, because that money does not support Netanel, doesn't support this particular program. It just supports the platform for petitions to send money. But obviously there's many good places to send your tzedakah, Yale, Chabad, the Chabad's at all of these campuses, locally here as well, University of Chicago, Northwestern, Illinois State. University of Illinois, and so forth. They're all facing this type of pressure. We hear about it from the most prestigious of universities, and it's going on in every university. Okay, unless someone else has a question.
The question I wanted to ask is, at Harvard, there was a similar type of situation, and employers of Harvard students, and of course they employ not just Harvard students, but students all over from Ivy League colleges and non-Ivy League colleges, said, we want to know who's signing this petition. We don't want to inadvertently hire someone who supports terrorism. Did anything like that come to or flow to Yale, or is there anything parallel to that in your observation of the events as they developed at Yale?
Phenomenal question. So I think that is kind of an example of the progress that has been made immediately following that, or while that was actually happening, when that got popularity. That's the same time that we had this celebration happen from the Yale's for Palestine, and they did try to garner support for their petition. They managed to get, I think, like 4 groups, some of which weren't even Yale affiliates, because I think people were really scared as a result. And I think also it demonstrated a lot of people, I would hope that reflects, just didn't support it. Their language was vile. But we definitely saw that. So we don't have the same petition involved at Yale within that realm from those students to try to come out in condemnation of Israel, thankfully. There was definitely, spread across campuses across the United States. I saw it, a kind of form to list all the students at these organizations to add to that kind of blacklist for donors. I was not somebody who involved myself directly with that initiative. There's definitely a lot of different opinions regarding it from students, I would assume, at all these campuses. But I do know that it was sent out and available, so I don't know what came of that. My priority was very much to come out against this professor and target that specifically, and while also acknowledging that there's other efforts being done on campus to remove this student club from recognition in the institution and any funding that they have. The last thing I will say, just back to your original question, Rabbi, concerning A-minuses, if it's inspiring to anybody, I was actually expelled from elementary school in 2nd grade. So I've had quite a journey. Yeah, Baruch Hashem. So yeah, nothing's gonna, knock you out in terms of this. Yeah.
I have one more question. I have one little thing on Harvard. Dershowitz, if I know I'm not pronouncing his Professor Dershowitz had
Alan
a debate.
Dershowitz. Yep.
Alan Dershowitz had a debate with another professor that was pro-Palestinian. They had a debate. I heard that I don't know if anyone can ever get the recording of this debate. I heard it was very, very interesting to hear about it, and that there was 31 organizations or groups on Harvard that was in favor of Palestine. So in order to help you with getting further of your agenda out, which we all encourage you to, see if anyone can find this debate that they had with each other. It just recently happened. I heard about it on the radio. I heard some clips about it, but I had to get out of my car, so I wasn't able to listen to any more of it. So just want to give you that. And with that, I'm not going to take up any more of your time or Rabbi Epstein's precious time. And again, we all thank you here from down in Chicago all the way to you at Yale, and keep up the great work.
Amen.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Unless someone else has a question, if anyone else wants to jump in, we'll give.
When terrorists went into Israel, fortunately, some of them were on video. We know what their faces are like. Okay, we can identify them when the soldiers go in. What about Yale students who demand that you die and that Israel die? They were on video too, weren't they, at City Hall?
Many of them, yeah.
Is there a way to identify who these people are who want you dead?
There are definitely, great question. Definitely efforts being made, as I said, for my peers to try to identify different students. Many of them are very open and vocal. They've signed on. They're members officially of this club. I've recognized many of them while I was there. I had a friend of mine, a Jewish friend, who one of them was a suite mate of theirs. So these are people that we actually live with, which is astonishing. And there's definitely efforts to do that. Again, hasn't been my mission to push forward with. But there are other students who are addressing that specific concern and working within this larger framework of academic institutions who are trying to identify these students and make their names available. So not, again, not something I'm focusing on, but there's definitely work being done.
Okay, Netanel, I mean, I know you've been on Fox News, right? CNN, and the other major outlets.
So CNN actually got canceled. I had an article with Fox, but hopefully it'll be rescheduled. A lot of scheduling.
You've now come to the epitome. You've hit the high point being on our Zoom. I mean, you could
very much so. Thank you.
And we really, really appreciate your time. Before everyone goes, I'm just going to share screen, and let's not forget the power of prayer. Let's say a chapter of Tehillim together, all of us. I have it on the screen. I hope you can see it there. I'll read it along in the Hebrew. Everybody's encouraged to read with me or to read it in the English. It's the 23rd Psalm. You recognize it, and our prayers can be of assistance to our brethren in Eretz Yisrael. And may God comfort the mourners, heal the injured, and return the captives speedily. Mizmor David Adoni Roy Lo Yachsar Ben Ezdesha Yarbitzeni Yemei Menucha Yisin Haleni Nafshi Yeshove V'Yancheni V'Magbeit Tzedek Laman Shemai Gam Ki Elech Begeit Samoves Lo Ira Ra Ki Ati Imadi Shiftecha Mishantecha Hemi Nachmuni Tarach Lafana Shulchan Negetzorai Deshanta V'Shem and Reishi Kaisru V'Ya Achte V'Ches Yidefuni Koyim Mechaye V'Shapti B'Veis Adinoi L'Eirech Yamim. Netanel, God bless you. Keep fighting the good fight. Hey, everybody out there, Yale, nice boy, single. You got a shit up for him.
Rabbi Epstein?
Yes.
Can I say one quick thing?
Your mother's here. You're in trouble.
This is his mother.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say I came on late, so I'm not sure, Netanel, if you already said this, but I do want to just say Netanel's a third year there. The school has really been, up until now, phenomenal in many things, supporting him as an observant Jew on campus. For any Jewish kid who goes there, there's a kosher food plan. There are services. There are Shabbos options between the Slifka Center at Yale and Chabad at Yale, who are phenomenal organizations. There's the Shabtai Center, incredible things. Netanel has had a sukkah on campus, every year. That they allow him to keep up in the residential building, mezuzahs on the doors. So they really, professors have been incredible with him, with changing exams, giving him extensions for papers. So I do just think it's important to recognize that and obviously we're incredibly supportive of this and everything Netanel's doing, but there has really been, up until now, some really wonderful support on campus for him as a Jewish student and for all Jewish students.
Any comment about the Pringles?
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, Netanel. You've been
They are closed, so I haven't been eating them.
It's your roommate for sure. Okay, Netanel, keep fighting the good fight. God bless you. Thank you so much for your time. I know we went way longer. I told you 10, 15 minutes. We've been doing this for 45 minutes. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate
my pleasure.
Your
Thank
time.
you all so much.
Thank you. Remember to check out the change. It was in the email I sent out to everybody. There was a link there, as well as to some of the other articles that talk about Netanel's work. And remember, what we do here, Torah study, tefillah, davening, tzedakah, all assist Eretz Yisrael and our brethren who are there. We do what we can. God will do what he needs to. And again, may we only have more happy and joyous things to speak about. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I do encourage everybody to read the petition. And again, if you think it's appropriate to add your name to it. And again, let's thank Netanel for his time. We'll see you all tomorrow night. Good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Epstein.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're done.